George Stinney was born October 21, 1929 in Pinewood, South Carolina. In 1944, he was living in Elkolu, South Carolina, with his father George Stinney Sr., mother Amy, brothers John and Charles, and sisters Catherine and Amy. Stinney's father worked at the city's sawmill, and the family lived in a service house. Elkolu was a small working-class industrial town where white and black neighborhoods were separated by railroad tracks. The town was typical of small southern towns of the time. Given the separate schools and churches for white and black residents, interaction between them was limited.
The crime of George Stinney.
On March 23, 1944, 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker and 7-year-old Mary Emma Thames, young residents of Elkolu, South Carolina, did not return home after riding their bicycles to buy flowers in a black neighborhood. The girls' parents raised the alarm and contacted the police. The very next morning, a search party, which included Stinney Sr., found the girls' bodies in a roadside ditch with the bicycle of one of the victims lying on top of the corpses. Police conducted a quick investigation and arrested two boys, brothers John and George Stinney Jr. The first was released a few hours later, and the second confessed to the crime and indicated where the murder weapon was hidden, a hammer, which inflicted fatal head injuries on the victims. The juvenile killer was given a trial, which took place just 10 days after his arrest. Meanwhile, his family was forced to move to another city because George Sr. was fired from his job and politely hinted that the killer's relatives were not welcome in Elkolu. According to press reports, a huge crowd of about 1,000 spectators gathered in the courtroom. The hearing of the case took only 2.5 hours, and the jury had 10 minutes to make a unanimous decision: guilty. One should not be surprised at such a quick and harsh verdict. The defense was represented by an official who had applied for public service and did not call a single witness. 3 policemen spoke on the prosecution's side, declaring that the arrested man had confessed to a double murder. Although the detectives did not provide a written confession to the court, their words were enough for an all-white jury to convict and impose a death sentence on the 14-year-old.
Execution of George Stinney.
On June 16, 1944, George Stinney Jr. became the youngest criminal to be executed in U.S. history. At the time of his death he was 14 years 7 months old. Depending on the state, the American state executes death row prisoners in 5 ways: shooting, hanging, gas chamber, injection, electric chair. In the South Carolina prison in Columbia they used the last option, which went to the juvenile killer. The suicide bomber was not tall enough, so the poor guy had to put a Bible on the seat to properly place him in the chair. At 7:30 a.m. a 2,400-volt discharge was released through the teenager's body, causing Georgie's heart to stop. The video of the execution can be found on YouTube and watched. George Stinney Jr., the youngest executed criminal in 20th century U.S. history. More than 70 years later, the story of the record-breaking death row inmate received an unexpected continuation. The sentence of a 14-year-old criminal was overturned due to procedural errors and a violation of the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution. That is, he was not provided with effective legal protection. The execution was called a mistake. Although the judge, Carmen Mullen, emphasized that overturning the verdict does not mean proving innocence and Stinney could well have committed a crime, but it is not possible to find out the truth.
Movie.
Later, a film called The Green Mile was made based on these events. One day, a harmless and good-natured African-American giant, John Coffey, is brought into the block. The court sentenced Coffey to death for the rape and murder of 2 little girls. He was arrested next to their lifeless bodies. Later, Coffey transfers some of his powers to Edgecombe and shows him the truth. It was not he who was the rapist and murderer, but Wild Bill. John, on the contrary, tried to resurrect the murdered girls, but did not make it in time. Edgecombe decides to commit official crime to help John secretly escape from prison. However, he asks the warden not to interfere with the execution, since he is very tired of the horrors of the life around him. John, who simultaneously feels the pain of everyone around him, sincerely wants to die. John Coffey takes his last meal, then heads to his execution. Already being fixed on a chair, he asks that they not put a hood on his head, but only put a helmet on him, which was not denied to him.